To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Barry.
Here.
Brooks.
Here.
Frizzalone.
Here.
Harris.
Here.
Markham.
Here.
Moran. Eustace.
Here.
Ogalla. Here. Summers. Here. Trainier. And Winfrey, you have a quorum. Thank you. Okay, we have the approval of the executive committee minutes from January 3rd. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Executive committee session minutes from January 3rd. All those in favor?
Aye.
Executive committee from January 10th.
Move.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And then executive session from January 10th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, we're on to the old business. First item under old business, we're going to leave on the table. That's not quite ready yet. We're not do anything with that. We don't have any other old business that I'm aware of. So on to the new business. Question, Jim?
You still have the annuity table on the table.
Move like it dies.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'll move to remove it from table.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. No,
Okay.
just table it.
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. We have no other old business that I'm aware of. For the new business, then the committee assignments. We have a couple of additions. One is the sublease for, that is ready, right, Nick? Or will be?
It will be.
Okay, for the CED Working Force Investment Board. And we've talked about this a couple of times before, and they're just finalizing that so that they're moving into the space in the, it used to be the old Al Baskin's Marshall, then it was a restaurant and a couple other things, but in the corner of Ottawa and Cass. So that's going to be for that space.
Al Baskin. Nobody remembers.
I do.
You should have back.
With me being much older, I do remember.
You know you
And you know, that's tied to the moving out of the Rialto Square building. So that's the new place that's going to be up. So we'll move that for next week. And then the Diamond Enterprise Zone, we've talked about that before. Diamond has notified us that they have set their public hearings, they're moving forward, they're ready for our part of it, so we'll put that onto the agenda.
If you could save the space for another one, Mary's going to check. Treasurer is asking
What
about
that
a name
resolution?
change for one of their brokers. And we have to
Okay.
see if that's, if we need a separate resolution or if we can add it to Ken's for depositories.
Okay, so we'll add that on. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll move to land use. It'll go to finance. If need be. It may be able to be done on executive, depending, it's just a name change. Okay, so we'll move to land use, Ken.
I took over.
I'm sorry, yes. Sorry, I'm looking at the paper instead of knowing what I should be doing. Yeah.
That's okay.
Sorry about that.
We have 4 items for land use. I don't know if if anybody wants to come up and talk about them, but the Highland Ridge DUD pre-authorization to foreclose, which is Highland South. You guys touch on it if you want.
This,
I do have a question. Oh, I'm sorry.
the pre-authorization to foreclose,
is kind of a thing we do. Basically, the surety for the subdivision improvements will expire, and so if we don't get a new one, we want to make sure we don't have to come in here and request a special meeting in order to get authorization to foreclose. So basically, I will take it and hold it, and if I need to use it, I'll use it. Most likely, I won't need to. We're in touch with the developer, and they have every intention of renewing, so
Okay. You had a question,
we've done
Jim?
it before.
Right.
I do have something I wanted to bring up on the land use, if I may. And it deals with special use for liquor licenses and the methodology. Because I still think, even though the land use department is bringing them along together, I don't think we ever really, here is the process.
Turn your mic on.
I tried to turn it
Okay.
on. Oh, come on, there we go.
There we go.
So, okay, want me to start over? So the process of special use and a liquor license, because, you know, you have to have, there is no available liquor licenses, and then you have to get a special use before you get a liquor license. And even though land use has developed a process to bring them along together, I don't know if we ever really talked about how we as a body are going to handle this. Now, I talked to some others and how they do it. And Mary, they said they do it together. So when it comes to the board, I'm talking about now when it comes to the board, you know, that, you know, and that license is going to where and that special use are going to go together. So there's no, and it would seem to me not a bad way of doing it. Somehow you have to be able to do this together. And I don't think it would be the same resolution, but.
No, and that I think was the intent, is that we would have to have separate resolutions because you're amending your ordinance to increase the number of licenses, but you also have whatever zoning approval you need on the same agenda. And so if one is approved, then the other would necessarily be approved. So the intent was that they go forward at the same county board meeting.
So the license would go first, because there needs to be a license available, right? And then the special use,
Well,
vice versa?
I mean, I could argue that until you approve the zoning, I mean.
Okay,
you
well,
won't
I'm
need a
asking,
license.
I'm not
I mean,
telling you, I'm just asking, what's the best way? So to make it fair, you know, and everybody understands it, you know, what is the best procedures for us to move something like this forward? I know land use has done something, but has anybody, yeah, I don't think it ever really came to the board. I'm not saying that land use didn't say, yeah, we have a methodology internally how to bring it forward. I don't know if we ever discussed how we as a board were going to deal with it, and how it would come to the board. That's my point. So, to be fair to people who are applying, you know, we need to set the policy and how this goes forward. That's all I want to say.
Okay, so then you're going to put that on the agenda for discussion at the next land use meeting? Tyler,
Yeah, we
or
can,
do you
and
want to?
I mean, where I am on it is, from my understandings, liquor sales can either be permissible use or not permissible use. So, I mean, I don't think that we would technically, if we don't want to, we can get rid of the special use for liquor sales, and then we just would, as a board, control the number of liquor licenses, so we could approve that or not, is that right, or am I?
It sounds
I
like.
mean,
you
is it
need more
possible?
discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you need more discussion within your committee on how you're going to manage that.
Because Mary looks like she has something to say.
Well, I just think the board's control with regard to liquor is tied to the zoning.
Okay.
I mean, you know, so because you have an executive form of government, if you have the number of licenses, it's then up to the county executive whether to issue it or not.
Correct.
So if you want to sort of regulate whether a particular parcel will get a license, then that is done through zoning.
Yeah.
So I think you gotta.
I don't think we should change it, Tyler, because and this is what kind of prompted what we're trying to do now, is that a zoning case, there's public input. It's transparent, people are notified. And so it gives the public, people who live in the vicinity, an opportunity to support it or not support it and so forth. So it's a little bit more transparent. So I think the way we do it is probably fine. It's just that bringing the cases along together.
Jackie?
I still want to know why we can't have them all in one package. Why it would need to be a separate for the liquor versus the special use or the zoning change. Why can't it all be in one thing? Because to me, if you have it in two separate motions, then it is possible to approve one and not approve the other. And it don't matter which order you put them in, we could still do that. So what is the legal reason why we can't approve the zoning and the liquor in the same motion?
Because what you're doing with the liquor license is you're amending your liquor ordinance to increase the number of licenses available. It is actually the county executive who issues the license. So it's not a zoning or a land use issue. And you're taking two entirely separate,
We've made them separate committees,
right?
and I get
They
that
are
they're two separate
committees.
things.
Yeah.
But I don't understand why you can't do A and B in the same vote. And I'll give you an example. Omnibus bills that Congress passes every year. I mean, I guess we're not Congress, okay? But they pass a multitude of different things on one vote. And so I get we're not Congress. I'm just trying to get to the legal reason why you can't put two separate items together.
Well,
Can I
Go
ask
ahead.
you something? Sorry, just real quick. Because it's an amendment to the ordinance and requires a separate hearing and notification, is one of the reasons I think. It's because we're amending the liquor ordinance. So that's a whole different process, which is, where does that all fit in?
Well, I don't have a problem with you doing that process, either for
Well,
the land or for the liquor.
My point is, Jackie, that we'll have to have a public hearing
Right.
for the liquor license. I
Don't
assume,
we have to do that for the actual zoning too?
no, they've already done,
They've done that.
they've already done that through planning and zoning commission.
Is that a public hearing?
Yes.
Yes.
Well,
We'll discuss it at committee.
Okay.
Further, I mean,
Yes.
we'll add it and we'll have a discussion about it, so.
But, you know,
Thank you, Jack.
the point is that the liquor license, land use can talk about how to process and bring them forward together. But the liquor license, it's more of a subject for this committee. But, land use, they should talk is, how do you have a public hearing, amend the ordinance, then vote on it, vote on the liquor license and with their other ordinance, and then the special use. Because there's more than, because now you have a public hearing for the amendment to the liquor ordinance.
Well, hopefully you would hold a public hearing at a committee, and if you get to the point of your special use permit, I mean, you're the same body dealing with both of them. If you're approving the special use permit, hopefully you already know that you intend to approve the liquor license.
My point is that this board probably needs to try to establish the process. So you just said, okay, to do this, we have to do a public hearing. You do that the month before it goes to the land use or whatever. My point is that you need to lay out the process of how you do this.
And no argument there. So are you asking them to put the discussion of the license itself, the liquor license itself, on the next executive
Yeah,
meeting?
that was it.
Fine, thank you, Ray.
Yeah, I just got a question. When I look at the whole thing and I understand your concern, one of the reasons that we're in this situation is because our zoning ordinances don't allow for liquor automatic, or not automatically, but by right, or that they could apply for. This could be all solved very simply if we just had in our zoning, the ability to have alcohol in certain areas. But then what would happen is we would come forward with an ordinance that would have a public hearing. The ordinance would then tie the liquor license to the individual. It would also create the liquor license at the same time, so the individual wouldn't have to go through both processes. Once ABC gets the liquor license, it's created automatically. They had a public hearing. The county board gets an opportunity to weigh in. And if we create the liquor license, it goes to that individual, to that establishment. Should that establishment, said establishment, go out of business or sell the business, the liquor license would then automatically just go away. So we would have to go through the process for the new individual. The ordinance would include the background checks and everything necessary to create the license, and we wouldn't have to wonder, am I going to get the special use? Not going to get the special use, but that would take a lot of work with land use because they would have to go through and say certain zoning districts would allow it. And I think, because that's big, but I think his department would probably prefer that route as well.
We've had discussions internally about trying to address this in the school process. We have looked at other jurisdictions. Many of them do identify within their zoning ordinance where liquor is permitted and where it's not. And what it then becomes is really the liquor license issue. That's where the hearing process is. That's where the permits granted or not granted is through that process, not necessarily the zoning. And what somebody would come to our office to basically is to say, is liquor permitted or not? And that would also be part of the license process, which we can assign off as well, as whether that's permitted or not. And you still have the public hearing, you still have public notice, you still have public input, but you've eliminated, the school process.
And if it's not permitted, at that time, they could file to make a variance or a special use to get it there.
So, I mean, it's just one option for the board to consider.
Okay, so we're putting that on to the land use committee, and then I'm going to ask if the liquor commissioner would work with them on that, and see if there's any other regulations that need to be addressed before we could do anything with that.
Certainly, and at the end of this process, then it's up to the county executive, who is also the liquor commissioner, to issue that license.
Correct.
But I mean, frankly, it's been vetted beforehand. People who have problems in terms of backgrounds don't apply for liquor licenses because they know. So usually there's no issue, but we have them fingerprinted, they go through the background check. They have to have a lease or own the property. All the requirements that are required in a municipal situation where the mayor issues the liquor license.
And they still have to get a state license.
And they still have to, that's very true. It's a dual process in the state of Illinois. You can't operate without both a state and a local liquor license. And we work with the state of Illinois Liquor Commission on those things because they don't have many people on the ground. So they work with the municipalities, the counties, to enforce and oversee liquor.
So they deny on the state level, does that mean no sense in applying on the local?
Can't operate without state.
You can't operate without the state.
Yeah.
So they deny it on the state, you don't.
Yeah,
It's
but it
okay.
comes in sometimes, service, the state's the first one to know if they aren't paying their taxes. So if they're not paying taxes, Illinois Department of Revenue notifies the state commission, they notify us and say, hey, they want to revoke their license.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
But they issue at different times, so they got on a different calendar year now. That's why you always know if there's a state license.
Right, and they have to have both. Okay. They have to have both.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, Tyler?
Then we also have amending section 155-16.40 for special use permits, which is we talked about last month with the solar farms and the application, or the time frame for their special use permits. Thank you. So that's just something that we brought up, and from my understanding, it'll be all special use permits. It'll be 2 years, not just the 1 year. So we also have our dynamic displays, signs, our signing ordinance, which I think came from Crete Township. Yep. So that'll be on there. I don't know if you guys want to talk about on any of that. And then we have.
Other dynamic signs, what's
There's a request, so the Crete Fire District got a grant, and it was for a dynamic sign, and they couldn't place it because of the zoning ordinance, so they requested that we look at it, and our representatives from District 1 both requested.
Correct, and I mean, my biggest thing is, and I think, understanding is a change in verbiage. The decision and what's written there now was decided on one single request, and they changed it. This is a whole different area, so I think that after I spoke with Brian, he said that would have to be something that we would have to do within the committee.
Certainly. So the current zoning code does not permit dynamic displays to face a residential zoning district, period, end of story. There's no separation distance. It just means if you're adjacent to a residential use or district, the sign can't face that way, and that's the situation in Crete. So I've surveyed some Will County communities and surrounding counties, and I put together some information for the committee to look at next week, and I'll have a couple different alternatives for the committee to evaluate to decide, do we want to change this section of the code, maybe put in a separation distance, maybe have other requirements for screening, do we want to look at dimming the sign at night, some things that other communities do. And also, it should be known that about 50% of the communities just don't allow a digital sign at all in that type of district. So that'll be something for the committee to consider. It came up before with the VFW in Plainfield, and that's what caused at that time the board decided we just were not going to allow any signs to face any residential district that were digital.
All right.
So Brian, are you going to suggest like blooms, there's a lot of things that could soften that up, distance, bloom.
Yeah,
Are you going to suggest different options?
So yes, I'll have different alternatives for the committee to look at, and right now there are brightness standards measured in nits for our digital off-premise signs or billboards. So that would probably be the same number you'd probably want to look at. I can tell you what other communities have done, what brightness levels they set. So there'll be a bunch of different things to look at, and then it'll be up to the board to decide what they think is appropriate.
So that'll be at the meeting on Monday.
Yeah.
All right, then my final item would be accessory structure heights in our ordinance. It sounds like we've been having a lot of issues with our current requirements that a lot of residents aren't able to apply or aren't able to comply. So we're going to take a look at that to make it easier for residents with their accessory structures like sheds and such.
Okay, thank you. Ken?
Good morning. First item was 2019 bond issuance update as provided by Karen Hennessy. It listed some target dates of the bond issue and the statuses, report she gave. Next item was also Jim.
We move on. And the bond issuance. I keep wrestling with this, Ken, and the amount that they want to issue. I'm not convinced. Well, even if they needed the 58 million or whatever they're saying they want to put out there, if we were short, we can do a bank issuance for $10 million without going out to bid. You just go out and talk to the banks and get the best thing, and you can do a $10 million annual issuance. I would rather go out for less, and those bank issuances, it's not a long process. You can do that pretty quick. Within a few months, you can get the money, and certainly we would know well ahead of time if we were going to need money. So I just want to say that I still wrestle with the amount. I just want you to know that.
Okay.
And I'll probably continue to maybe make an argument. I know this is that we were being told at one point, well, we can't afford more than 35 million, and now all of a sudden it's 58 million. I just want to make sure we're taking a good hard look at this.
Mike?
And again, within those two buildings, we have 12.8 million in contingency. I'm not saying we're not going to use some of it, but if we use 2.8, it'd be 10 million that we would have. And like you said, if we did spend that extra 10 million, we could always go back and just do tank qualify on that. Instead of borrowing that money right now,
long term,
and then having to pay long term and not pay on for the next couple of years before we even know if we need it.
Jackie?
I was
Okay, I was talking to Ray this morning, and he was thinking that we had 18. So if we went from 18 to...
No. 18 on the courthouse, original from the 215 number. So 215.
Original.
Yeah, and after the bids came through, it went down to 205. And at that point, we only had 9 point something left on that building. And then there's 3 point something on the health department.
3, 2, and
So
Okay,
18
so
was
that's where you're
from
getting
the
the
original
12, the 9 and
215
the 3. Okay, because I was going to say, we blew 6 million in 2 months. We
No.
better hang on to that big contingency. So, but we did, so we've got 12 right now. And how much have we?
We've got 12.8 in contingency.
Right.
Which means we may not need to spend
Right.
that money. We don't have it. That's
Right,
why.
no, but it's in
It's
contingency.
in contingency, but the money isn't there. It's just in our budget for contingency. So the money doesn't exist.
Not yet.
What we're doing is
We're going
borrowing
to borrow it.
58, which would be
How money we may never use.
65. We're going to borrow that money right now, assuming that we are spending that contingency.
We're not gonna spend it all.
No, there's no way we'll
There's no way you're gonna spend it all.
Yes.
Too many microphones on. All right. Ken, I thought, as a minister, I can't use the word hell, but I can say heck. I thought Karen put up a heck of an argument to your committee last week and shared with us, Mike, that it's better to have it and not need it than need it not have it. I do understand the consequences, Jim, of the 58 million. I understand that.
But we can borrow it.
No, I
if we
understand.
qualify. We don't need
But
to-
I thought Karen explained to us and gave us a printout of where that money will be needed later on down the road. That's all I'm saying.
Let me say this, and I know they look at different numbers, things change, but Karen also told us that we couldn't go over 35 million.
Yeah.
And now, she's saying she's getting 58 million. I'm just
Okay.
pointing out things change, but, we've gotten some mixed messages, and I guess is what I'm concerned about.
And Herb, you were right, you did present numbers that said that's for the long term.
Spend it in 3 years.
The money that she's gonna borrow now, we
Any
don't
money we
spend
borrow,
in
we
3 years.
have to spend it for 3 years.
And you're thinking that we wouldn't need to spend it on the 3.
Well, I'm just thinking, the money that we're gonna use for the building, we're gonna be a year and a half just to spend it on the building. That means we got a year and a half left if there's additional money. I mean, certainly we could spend it, but we need to spend it. And if we do, we could always borrow that money later, so we're not paying on it now.
Point of order. This is a discussion for committee. This meeting is about assignments.
Thank you.
Okay, Don.
Okay.
Well, the thing is though, but the reason I think it is because this is moving, this is gonna move forward,
Okay.
So,
And it will move forward, you're right. So then, when it moves to the floor, then you'll need to vote up or down.
well, I think that we should, whatever number goes to the board, should be a number that we have confidence in, rather than having people vote no. That's,
Thank you. Nick?
Denise, just because this has been an ongoing discussion, maybe next week's executive, we could have Karen Hennessy here again, and we can discuss it further with everyone, why we're at where we're at. And I mean, I appreciate the suggestion that, well, the comment that we were at a lower number, we couldn't go above it, now we're going a higher number. So let's talk about that. But why don't we do that next week at executive before it gets to the full board? Because then there's still some time for discussion before it gets to a final vote.
He does a heck of
That's
a
fine.
job.
Deshaun?
And I would just like to add that, the numbers that were presented, and I think if we do have the discussion next week, that let's really voice our opinions and kind of really hone in on those numbers because they were presented, the facts were, laid out there, and let's hear what the board is comfortable with.
that's what you do.
Thank you. Okay. So then for next week, next Thursday, we'll take it in line.
All right.
Okay. Ken?
We also have a discussion regarding OPEB. That was item number 2 that was also presented by Karen. She gave us a brief overview of the OPEB board committee, its function as far as investing the retirement funds.
Another resolution 18352, that's the signature acknowledgement for the county treasurer. Item 4 is appropriating the pass-through grant fund. Item 5 is appropriating grant fund in the sheriff budget from the state criminal alien assistance program. This was we're going to come back to that next month. Finance committee the sheriff to relook at that, resubmit the resolution.
Next week, Thursday.
Next Thursday, we'll move it to next Thursday.
Next Thursday, I'm sorry, yeah, next Thursday, exactly.
Okay. Anything else for you, Ken?
Just some cleanup item, we transfer and appropriate within various county budgets, and also authorize the county executive to execute necessary documents for the liquor tax program.
Okay.
That's it.
We've got
That's it?
That's it.
Three
Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
We've got 3 items under Public Works and Transportation. The first was authorize the Will County State's Attorney's Office to proceed with condemnation cases regarding the county's improvements to Briggs Street from Interstate 80 to Washington Street, going north to Washington Street. Number 2 is granting ingress and egress for a vacant lot on Center Road. It's a pool area. There's a guy's losing some access. He wants to have farm access or whatever. Number 3 is granting a variance for 4 Oak subdivision on Ford Road. I think it's get divided in 4 parcels or something, and there's going to be 2 common driveways. So it's all pretty simple stuff. That's all we get.
Thank you. Tyler?
Nothing for judicial.
Okay, thanks. Lori? Thank you. Jackie?
We're going to have, hopefully, maybe, a draft of the state agenda, and then we're going to discuss a study that was done on temporary workers at our warehouses, and hear from the Veterans Assistance Commission, their report that they'd like to see if there are ways the county can work better with the state to assist our veterans. So they're looking for us to assist them in some way.
Okay. Thank you.
I was just, Jackie, I didn't get to talk to, just made aware of legislation for HB 880, and that regards drainage district fees and the airport footprint that haven't been paid since they purchased the property. Well, out in the country, that is our only means of getting rid of stormwater. And so by them not paying this fee since they purchased property back in 2002, the local drainage districts have less funds. So I'd like us to look at that as well.
Yeah, we can definitely add that to the agenda. I think I saw an email from maybe Margot McDermott
Yes.
saying that she had introduced that legislation. So I was expecting to hear from you. Do you want to put it on for this one, or do we have time?
Yeah.
We have it on?
Okay, and then we can talk about it in open.
Mm-hmm.
Making that motion.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to add HB 880 for discussion.
All those in favor? Anything else for you, Jackie?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. Next.
Capital, I have nothing to bring forward since we had the groundbreaking the other day. My work is done. I can go home now. So thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Ray did all the work. Gee, thanks.
Okay, and then for executive committee, are there any questions for any of the items we're bringing forward for executive?
Question? We didn't talk about liquor license, different kind of liquor licenses within executive. Jim, you were going to bring up agritourism license.
One of the things that was discussed at land use, and was decided that we do have a new zoning classification that was put in a number of years ago, I guess, which is agritourism. And we talked about maybe amending the liquor ordinance to basically put a classification in that deals with agritourism. I can think there's a number of different things that could be different. You could be making cider or something on an ag tourism site or something. So it would be to amend the liquor ordinance to include agritourism as a separate classification within the liquor.
Right.
And it seemed to have support coming out of it. I mean, people are shaking their heads, yeah, that makes sense.
And I think, Jim, aren't you looking at that and looking at the surrounding ordinances and some other areas to write up something about that?
Yeah, I mean, we did find an ordinance in Homer. That was the only one we found. We've looked around to try to, work with you and the state's attorney to find something that fits. But there is at least a start. Homer's got a definition, and whether that would fit our needs. We didn't find any others in Will County, but there is that.
There's some like probably further out, I think we're looking at Champaign. maybe
Yeah, we looked at
Long
Champaign,
Grove.
they didn't have anything, we looked at Galena, but, I shared that with the state's attorney's office, and so at least that's a starter. I don't know.
Jim, you might want to look up in Michigan where they have a lot of these
Yeah,
little
they have
wineries and so forth that they do, it's more rural and agricultural related. They might have some up that way.
Yeah. So would you be able to, for the March meeting, then be able to bring some sort of write-up or wording for us to look at on that?
But probably, yeah,
After the state's attorney's review,
I'll work with the state's
obviously.
attorney's office, but
Yeah.
like I said, we'll look for other models that can look at what maybe fits our needs here best.
Okay.
But we've got the Homer one already in the
Wait a
pipeline.
minute, Jim.
And the other model, I think we should look at is a packaged liquor, wine and beer only. We have that.
Not as part of agritourism.
No,
That's
as
a
a
separate
separate,
category under
but
the
I think
Another
we should look
class-
at it at the same time.
Another
We-
classification?
classification
Yeah,
under
because
our licensing.
we have,
generally.
yeah, we have the gas stations and the Lenny's type thing. I think they'd be willing to do that. I mean, obviously, if you look how packaged liquor is bought, a lot of quick places, hard liquor is bought to drink right now. The other packaged liquor like beer, when you're kind of way home, you're getting a case of beer for.
Right.
So if we had a wine, beer only packaged liquor, I think most of, we've already talked about this on our side, most of us would be more inclined to let that license be let rather than with the hard liquor at these quick drive-in places.
And that's your prerogative. We just issued the license. You folks set the classifications. I think the beer and wine classification that's on the books is for only on-premises consumption. And this would be an additional classification. And again, you control the classification and the number. You just issue the licenses if there's one available.
Okay. Any others on the committee?
And the other thing I might mention, we're looking at different classifications. I think we should also be looking at the cost. Right now, basically, most of our retail licenses are the same, right? I mean, there's not a, so if you got a full-blown liquor store, for example, maybe your license should be, the license is still $1,000, Jim?
Yeah, I mean, they
Maybe-
range 2,000, but I mean, again, they probably haven't been looked at by this body probably in some time. So, and again, that's your prerogative, what you want to set in terms of, a fee is your prerogative. And so you can look at that. I know
Well,
the
the other
last 10
thing,
years they haven't been changed.
the other thing I would ask you then to do is give us some kind of cost. You're right, they haven't been raised as far as I know in 20 years. There's a cost to the county, Jim, you go out to the liquor establishments, you have to check, it's part of your salary,
Our deputy sheriffs.
Our deputy
they're-
sheriffs have to go out.
They're the enforcement arm.
If we could get some kind of analysis of cost too, that we have to do for enforcement, so, I mean, that's another area. The other thing I might say about the ag tourism, there's a pending application. And in fairness, I think we should look at it as prompt as we can. I mean, I don't think we should let this drag on and on. I'm just gonna throw that out.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything else in the committee? No? Okay, now Rachel?
Yeah, so I worked with Jen and Marie to pull the language together. I also researched all across the country different agritourisms, wineries, and what their liquor license were in different areas. I submitted some language to Denise today via email. It's basically the same as the Homer Glen, except for the last item is taken off. Item 3 is taken off about food because we don't have a description for food. So if that's something later the committee wants to go back and throw back on, we can present both copies. We did change the fee, or I changed the fee in there to align with the fees that we have currently on our liquor license, so it's at least in line with that. If then later you want to increase all the fees to a different price, that can be, but Homer's Clinton was a little bit cheaper than ours, so I brought that in alignment. So that has been submitted to hopefully put on an agenda so we can move that forward.
So the ordinance on zoning will go to the land use committee to look at. And then Jim, excuse me, you're going to be looking at the language, looking at other areas, seeing what works with statutes in accordance with the state's attorney, and to sort that out. And then we haven't had a price review in quite some time, so you'll also look at that along with the executive committee. Okay?
And can I ask one other thing? When will you have something for us to look at?
Jim, you mean?
Yes, Jim,
Yeah.
yeah, when we, I mean, and Mary, I mean, like I say, I think it's just in fairness, I think this has
So we can, yeah,
to,
just.
so we can start looking
Well, I
at
think
it.
that basic agritourism, just following up on what Rachel was saying, I mean, the Homer one, I think is a good place to start. I think there's things you may want to change, because I noticed in reading it a second or third time that we talked about serving, I think it was beer just in pitchers, but I mean, those are things you can tweak. But I think the basic concept, it's a good starter, and we've got that right now. So, like you mentioned, there is somebody in the pipeline looking, so I mean, you can start with that if you find some better language, but that ordinance is,
It's not like looking, you issue them a special use for liquor.
yeah.
You already approved the special use.
No, we didn't.
I thought we did,
No.
we did it all. Oh, no, we approved the other one.
Yeah. So this then would allow, as he finishes his work and Mary, or state's attorney reviews it, would allow us to put those two things together.
Yeah.
Could we, by the March meeting, be able to have some kind of draft to look at? Is
Yeah,
that
like I said,
reasonable?
we've got the Homer one, which I think Rachel tweaked a little, because I think it was $1,000 fee, and ours are more in the 2,000, 2,500 range, but that's ready to be looked at now and shared, because, you know, at least around here, that's the only thing we found.
Beer and wine
Okay.
is pretty straightforward.
Yeah, beer and wine is, that is a minor addition, yeah, that's nothing for a package store there. But language, that's 2 sentences.
We can't have the curve.
Right, yeah.
That's when it comes to roads.
Yeah, you can't drive too much, but if you get through the potholes, then you're good. Okay, thank you, Jim. Okay, so then we have that on for Lana for next.
You want that for the first meeting in March then?
Yes.
Well, can I answer these? Do you think you can give us something by, at our next executive
At least for
meeting?
discussion.
Just for
Yeah.
discussion?
We can have it for discussion for next week for executive.
Yeah, can you give us?
Yeah, we got the agritourism already, we'll give you the language for beer and wine, that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
But then for the final write-up, it's probably going to be the 1st of March, yeah. So we can have discussion for next week, certainly. Okay.
Bring some samples too.
Get nosy.
I'm trying to keep
You bring a lot of wine during.
Some people.
People.
Okay, anything else for
Could I ask
executive?
a question?
Yes.
Going back to Jackie committee on, you moved your meeting for next week, is that right?
Yeah, we're gonna be on Monday.
Monday? Okay, what time did we get?
Normal time, 9 o'clock. And
Okay.
land use, I think, also moved
Because
theirs.
it's a holiday.
Right, it's a holiday on
It's a
Tuesday.
holiday.
Right, okay, okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's just because the county building's gonna be closed on Tuesday, and we've got a lot of important work to do.
I won't say nothing else.
Okay. Okay. Do we have anything else for a second? Okay. Mary, do we have any pending opinions with you?
I don't believe so.
No, okay. Okay, so
Can we have a motion to do the committee assignments?
that's the next thing.
Is the committee assignments as amended?
Second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Then, public comments? today. And there is a need for executive session today for some imminent litigation. So we need a motion to go into. All those in favor?
Perry?
Yes.
Brooks?
Yeah.
Brizalone? Harris? Markham? Moran? Eustace? Ogalla? Summers? Rainier? And Winfrey, you are in executive session.
Thank you.